All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 2022 Watertown School District School Board meeting, and I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our agenda tonight, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. Yesterday, we received the extremely sad news that Watertown ninth grader Nate Buckley had passed away. Our school community is saddened by his death, and we send our condolences to his family and friends. So let us take a moment in silence to pause and honor Nate. Okay, thank you. We'll move into the consent agenda, and item 2.1 is the roll call. Please note that all board members are present. Mrs. Clausen. Item 2.2, are there any conflicts of interest to be disclosed this evening? Okay, item 2.3, a review and approval of the agenda. Could we have a motion, please?
I move approval of the agenda.
Motion by Ms. Moulton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Stein. Any comments or questions on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 2.4, approve the minutes of the December 13th, 21 meeting. Could we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Iverson.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lohr. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2.5, receive the financial reports for December 2021.
Thank you. In the general fund, received 2020 taxes payable in 2021 in the amount of $485,786. The monthly state aid payment in the amount of $1,017,871 was received. Expenditures were moderate, with the payroll expenditures including the December 15th bonus payment. The ending cash balance in this fund reflects improvement when compared to the prior years. Operating transfers in typically account for 4% of the general fund revenue budget, in which the capital outlay fund supports the operation with a transfer of $1.2 million. Through ESSER funds received under the American Rescue Plan, the amended budget reflects a decrease to this transfer in the amount of $650,700, with anticipation of $549,000 to be supported with available fund balance. Therefore, no transfer needed in support of the general fund in fiscal year 2022. Capital outlay revenue consists of the typical December taxes and interest income. Federal revenue in the amount of $63,096 is in support of school bus rebates that funded 23% of the budgeted expenditures for transportation. As noted within the explanation of general fund, consideration of no expense transfer of $1.2 million will create an influx to end of fiscal year fund balance in FY22. Special education revenue consists of the typical property taxes and a monthly state aid payment. The cash balance in this fund is maintained over the prior year, and support from federal drawdowns in January will increase the end-of-month operation of this fund. The moderate revenue consisted of sources received in relation to tuition, state support, sales, interest, and other revenue in the operation of LATC. Federal revenue in the amount of $847,591 is received in support of HERF allowable expenditures. The revenue was significantly exceeded by the expenditures as typical for December. The payroll expenditures included the December 15th bonus payment. The ending cash position reflects improvement when compared to prior years. Financial aid received allocations to accommodate the financial aid activity of students attending LATC. Increased activity in this fund is anticipated for January as students are registering for the second semester. Lake Area Technical College bookstore and food service was exceeded by the expenditures for the month due to the replenishment of inventory and a decline in student activity over the holiday break. Activity in these funds is expected to increase in January with the students back on campus. Federal revenue received in the K-12 Nutrition Fund is significant, with the revenue being associated with the operation under the providing of free meals to families. It should be noted that under the National School Lunch Federal regulations, the district is limited to operating its net cash resources to no more than 3 months' operating expenses. It is anticipated to need to spend down $109,000 to maintain operation at this level. I would be happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we'll do the discussion items for Lake Area Tech. And first of all, 3.1, is there any public input on agenda or non-agenda items this evening for Lake Area? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the action items. And first of all, we have personnel. 4.1.1 is retirements.
Yes, ma'am. Lake Area Tech has no retirements and no resignations this month.
Okay. And we'll move to 4.1.3, the contract recommendations and addendums.
Yes, ma'am. Under contract recommendations and addendums, you'll see the hiring of new staff as we start our new semester, and also some of our part-time positions. We'd recommend your concurrence on or your approval of the contract recommendations and addendums.
We have a motion to approve those.
I move approval of the contract recommendations as presented.
Motion by Mr. Stein
Second.
and a second by Mrs. Lohr. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4.1.4 stipend requests.
Yes, ma'am. The Lake Area Tech supports our instructors when they pursue the advanced degrees in their area of study. Therefore, we'd request your support for the requested stipends.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mrs. Lohr
Second.
and a second by Mr. Stein to approve the stipend requests. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4.2, we'll move on to property, and first of all, 4.2.1, consider the bid recommendation for welding simulators.
Yes, ma'am. Last month, Lake Area Tech requested permission to bid on a welding simulator. We'd recommend that you accept the low bid from AOX Welding, but we'd like to purchase 2 welders at that bid price. That it still is within our estimated budget and is supported through the funding through the Perkins grant, which is allocated for equipment. We recommend your approval of purchase of 2 welding simulators.
Okay, could we have a motion on that, please?
I move approval of the welding simulators as presented.
Motion by Ms. Moulton
Second.
and a second by Mr. Iverson. Any questions on that item? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 4.2.2, consider the bid recommendation for electric vehicles.
Yes, ma'am. Lake Area Tech went to bid on electronic vehicles and was unsuccessful in receiving any bids. Therefore, that we'd request permission to direct purchase those electronic vehicles at an amount not to exceed $75,000. This equipment would be budgeted through our Perkins FY22 Perkins grant.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Iverson. And a second by Ms. Moulton to approve direct purchase of electronic vehicles up to $75,000. Any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 4.2.3, consider the state contracted furniture bid.
Yes, ma'am. Office Peeps has been awarded as a vendor under the state as the lowest bidder for items contained in the state price list. As a local government, this allows us to purchase items with our local vendors that have already been through this bidding process. Lake Area Tech requested the authority to purchase furniture items included in the state bid list up to $500,000 for the diesel expansion. These would be purchased through the CARES dollars or HERF funds that have been offset those expenditures for that furniture.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I move approval of the state contracted furniture bid as presented.
Motion by Ms. Moulton
Second.
and a second by Mr. Iverson. Any comments or questions on that item? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And item 4.3, new program proposal.
Yes, ma'am. Lake Area Tech is seeking the approval to start an Associates of Applied Science and Surgical Technology. The new program is in response to meeting the regional industry demands at the request of both Prairie Lakes Hospital, Glacial Lakes Orthopedics, the Millbank Hospital, and the Brookings Hospital. In northeast South Dakota, there's a shortage of certified surgical technicians, and this is causing, limiting their options for surgeries and the ability to perform the number of surgeries needed. The Lake Area Tech's Prairie Lakes Healthcare Center of Learning, particularly with our addition of our state-of-the-art sim labs, has the facilities to provide this training, as well as the outcomes for those students are projected to be very strong, as we see 12% growth in the already critical need area, and the average salary right now in 2020 was over $46,000. With that, we request your approval of this program, and subsequent to your approval, we submit it to the State Board of Technical Education for their approval.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the surgical tech program.
Motion by Mrs. Lohr. And a second by Ms. Moulton. Any comments or questions on that item?
I'd like to thank President Cartney. You're always looking for areas to serve not only the entire state, but the region as far as industry and medical, and the addition of new programs is always greatly appreciated.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, we have the motion and the second to approve the new surgical tech program. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, President Carney.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we'll move on to the discussion items for the K-12 side. 5.1, is there any public input on agenda or non-agenda items this evening? Okay, if not, moving to 5.2 in the Northeast Tech High School report.
No meeting of the superintendent's group this month. We will meet again in February, on February 8th. But just a reminder to those board members who are serving on the full Northeast Tech Board, that was moved up a week, so it will actually be this Wednesday, January 12th, 5:45 p.m. at Northeast Tech.
Okay, thank you. 5.3, the budget calendar.
Thank you. The proposed 22-23 budget calendar is provided for your review. The dates coincide with the dates of the prior year's budget development and the dates outlined in state statute. Please take note that April 25th will be the date in which the board will meet in special session to review and discuss the proposed budgets of both K-12 and Lake Area Tech. And that will be at 5:30.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Clausen. Next, we've got 5.4 and the Pride Survey. That's on. Okay.
All right. Hello. My name is Kelly Rumsa. I'm a prevention specialist at the Human Service Agency, and I facilitate the community-based prevention programming with our coalitions, as well as oversee the school-based programming of Project Success at our middle and high school. I want to thank you for this opportunity for me to share our recent student data. There is a lot of information to share. I'll be going over it very quickly, so I apologize for the data overload. I'm going to skip a couple slides here. So I'm going to go ahead and just talk about why we do this survey with our students. This is to gauge our students' perceptions on alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, mental health concerns, school climate, safety, and risk and protective factors. The data helps us to look at kind of the why here, why now with our students. It gets us to ask questions. It helps us to identify priority areas that need to be addressed or recognized, and it just helps us to kind of gauge where our students are at. This slide is just showing the number of students who participated this year. We surveyed in October, which is consistent with the previous years of when we survey our students. And as you can see, we have nice representation of the student population. This is just to show the demographics of the students, just so that we can see what our student population is made of and those who responded to the survey questions. So with the data, we've done Pride Survey for several years now. Prior to that, we did Search Institute. And the surveys that we use are national-based surveys, and so very valid and reliable data. They have lie factors built into the surveys so that we look for consistencies and inconsistencies with student surveying. So if they find responses that are very high and just doesn't seem quite right, they'll throw those out. And so with the response of student participation and the responses, our survey is very reliable and valid. So with this first slide that I'm showing, basically is to show our trend data since we've been surveying our students, and that began back in 96. We look at 30-day use because that's typically more regular use than annual, but we also have that data as well. Trend data is very important, as you can see here. It looks at what programming maybe we need to be implementing, if there's changes to what we're doing, and it's also to look at the different impacts. And not only is it reflective on what we're doing in the school, it's reflective of what's being done in the community. So with this, overall, we're just seeing that consistent downward trend for the most part. 2021, we're starting to see some increases in some of the substances. One thing that I wanted to highlight here is in 98 is when I started doing community-based prevention, and so that's when we started looking at some changes. And then with this information, just looking at it in a different way, in 2010 is when we started our school-based prevention programming project Success. And as you can see, the impact that programming has had with our students. When we first started with programming, our primary focus was alcohol use, but we always address other substances as well. Most recently, we've added prescription drug use and e-cigarettes, along with meth education and opioid use. Most of our use rates are lower than the national, but it only takes one or a small cluster of students to create a tick upwards, especially when you're looking at smaller percentages like illicit drug use when it's under 2%. That could be one or two students there. With this slide, this is a comparison just to look at 2019 versus 2021. And what we liked here is just to look at what's going on with our student population. The data previously showed grades 7 through 12 together. This breaks it apart from middle school and high school, so we can look at maybe what's going on with the different age levels. So right here you can see a shift with middle school behaviors. We're seeing an increase in use in regards to alcohol, e-cigarettes, and cigarette use. And so that's when we start looking at, what is the shift that's taking place with our middle school students? Is there easier access? Has there been a change in our community? And so looking at data like this helps us to look at those questions. This is a different way of looking at that data. Again, it's breakdown of the grade levels. This is just showing a general trend is upwards. But if you look at all the substances listed there, it's still illegal for our youth to use until the age of 21. So why do we see that gradual increase even though it's not something they're supposed to be doing? This slide is showing a comparison with just our high school students in grades 9 through 12 in comparison with South Dakota students. South Dakota participates in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey every other year. Their last data point was in 2019. And so what this is showing is alcohol binge drinking. So it's asking students, have you had 5 or more drinks in one setting? And as you can see, our high school students are lower than a typical high school student in South Dakota, but it's still 10%. The next couple slides that I'll be sharing is looking at the risk and protective factors with our students. It's nice with us doing the same surveys year after year. They do make some changes. We can have that comparable data to gauge if we see any shifts or changes. Knowing what substances are being used is important, but we also need to know what can help reduce or abstain from negative risk-taking behaviors. And so that's important for us to focus on that as well. And so looking at the risk and protective factors helps us look at what type of messaging or programming needs to be implemented, not just school-based, but also looking at what is reflective of our community. Looking at the risk factors, we typically look at those 10% or higher. And what we recognized in that area was harm to self or to others, either making threats or acting on those as well. So that's looking at thinking about suicide, trouble with police, and hurting others or threatening to hurt others. And so with looking at this information, it just needs to be acknowledged that it does exist, and we need to look at why are we seeing these behaviors that we're seeing. With the protective factors, we focus on this as well because we need to know what those positive things that influence our youth as well and what we need to strengthen to help our youth to make good choices and to be thriving. And so it's very important for our students to feel that they belong, that they feel valued, that they know what their boundaries and expectations are, and that they have caring adults in their life. And so what this does is just gives us a snapshot of some of those protective factors. Something that stood out this year, but it was also reflective in 2019 as well, is that we continue to see a decrease in students reporting involvement or participation in school or community activities, whether it's sports or other clubs, music organizations, things like that. And so we need to be looking at why is that reason behind that. 30% or less reported that involvement. And also with the response of asking them that they've never participated is pretty steady and consistent as well. And so one thing that we need to be thinking of or asking ourselves, are students aware of the activities that are available to them? Are they available and accessible to them? And also looking at, we might talk about these activities, but are we showing or engaging the students in a different way? Because someone might tell me, oh, you should get involved in this activity, but unless someone takes me there or gets me involved that way, I'm more likely to participate. And it's also looking at what does our activities policy reflect of that as well. What this slide shows is looking at the trend data by grade level. Again, it's that elevated use across the ages, but what we're seeing is a shift with our lower grade levels where we're kind of starting to see some spikes in use. And so that's why we're looking at this data as what's going on, what are the students talking about, what are they seeing? Is it because they have access either at home or retail? Is it that we're more accepting of substance use with our young people? Or is it that experimentation? And so those are things that we need to have those conversations and to be reflective of what's that messaging that we're portraying and what are we role modeling to our youth as well. So part of that goes along with looking at different areas and really gauging what people's perceptions are. We need to change people's perceptions before we see a change in behavior. And so looking at perception of risk of harm, students know that there's a risk if they participate in these behaviors, but again, there's something that's causing them to ignore that risk. One, we know that it's human nature for adolescents to be risk takers. They're wired to take risks. They're just trying to figure out who they are. But we don't want them to take part in those risky behaviors. We want them to be more positive. And so when we see that perception of risk go down, we're going to see an increase in use. I do want to reflect, looking at the e-cigarettes, we did see an increase with perception of harm, and that's contributed to, we knew that that was becoming a concern with our youth. We've done more district-wide and community-wide as education, and so they're learning and understanding those consequences and seeing that shift change. The next one is perception of parental disapproval. Again, we see that shift going downward a little bit. And so we need to be looking at what's that messaging or role modeling that is taking place. Why is that being more acceptable, or why do our students feel that their parents don't think it's that big a deal if they use? I mean, the percentages are still high in some areas, but we are seeing that decrease, especially when you look at alcohol and marijuana, and also with tobacco as well. And then we look at the influence of friends. So if our friends say it's cool, we're going to do it, right? If our friends say it's not so cool, we're not going to do it. And so we really rely heavily on what the students think their friends think. And so again, we're seeing that shift downwards again. And so when we see these perceptions change, we're going to see behaviors change. Right now, we're seeing that these perceptions are going down, and now we're starting to see a little uptick in those behaviors. And so when we have data like this, we can kind of get ahead and start looking at what do we need to be doing to educate, raise awareness, letting people know that we're starting to see some behaviors rise up again, and how should we be addressing that. What we also look at is when and where students use. Again, a lot of our focus is substance use, but we also look at other risk-taking behaviors as well. We know that when substance use is involved, other behaviors take place. Our judgment might not be as clear, or they make decisions that they normally wouldn't. Again, where we see this, we divided it out so you could see what middle school and high school responses would be, but they're fairly consistent, mostly at home or at a friend's house, and then they use on weekends, weeknights, and after school. Another piece that Pride Surveys looks at, they break down the data by gender. We do this because we want to see what trends are influencing the different genders. Are there different influences? Is there different impact? Are we seeing behaviors differently among them? And so what we're seeing, especially with substance use, that the trends are evening out. Years prior, we'd see a high use rate among males and not so much with females. We're seeing that level out, and even at some points where female use is higher than male use. And so, again, looking at what are those trends and what are we seeing? And not just at a local level, but also at a national level. We're seeing that shift where substance use is becoming a coping mechanism and that it's being more accepted. And then when you look at marketing products as well, with the different types of drinks and things like that that are available, it is becoming more appealing to the female population. The mental health is a rising concern that we have. With our youth, this is something that we've been looking at over the years now, and we're fortunate to have trend data from 2017, 19, and now 2021. So this helps us to gauge and to look at what are we seeing with our youth. And for the most part, we're seeing an increase with mental health concerns with our students. We're also seeing that with the adult level, community level, state level, national level as well, but that doesn't give it that permission of it being okay. If anything, this is helping us to realize that it is a concern, an issue, and that we see the importance of healthy ways to take care of ourselves and making it okay to ask for help. And also we're looking at the correlation of, are they using substances to deal with that pain or to deal with the mental health concerns that we have, and we are seeing that shift as well, those unhealthy coping mechanisms, and those just trying to escape. And then if they're under the influence and they're altering their thinking, then they might have those thoughts that they typically may not have had before. But again, it is something that we are seeing that upward tick with that. This slide is just to show a cross-tabulation of something that Pride does. They put in some different information to see what the trend is. And what this slide basically is showing is the influence of substances and how it impacts decision-making. So what this slide is telling us is they're more likely to get in trouble if they're using substances. This slide is focusing on safety. Again, this is the students' perceptions of where they feel least safe at school. And so that's when we need to be looking at what's going on at the schools. Have there been any changes? What changes need to be made? And then focus on the messaging as well as to why here and why now. And again, we have the opportunity to break it into the different grade levels so you could see if there's differences between the middle school and the high school. This slide is just in a little more detail of the slide that showed student involvement in activities and organizations and clubs. We broke it down by grade level and also looking at the comparisons of 2019 and 2021. And again, this just is showing that gradual decline of involvement. We've done a cross tabulation of the data as well and looking at students who report that they feel involved, they're highly involved in activities, or that they feel that they belong in their school. And so that's something that we need to be focusing on as a protective factor too, is that engagement. And if they feel that they fit in or that they belong, that they're going to be more successful. So we need to look at ways of engaging our students, or at least having them feel that way. Again, this is them reporting that information. And showing the decrease in involvement, COVID could play a part in that, so the 2023 data will be helpful in that capacity, but we also need to be looking at the right here, right now with our student reporting. Overall, our students report that they feel they make good grades at school, and it's their interpretation of what those good grades are, but it's nice that they have that positive reflection of that they make good grades. This is showing comparison of 2019 and 2021 of students who have skipped school without parental permission. Not a very high percentage, kind of has that general upward tick as they get older. Freshmen this year have probably been a little more challenging, maybe trying to figure out their ways of the high school. But again, this data just kind of helps us to look at what changes or what things may be going on that may impact their reporting. Again, showing getting trouble at school. And with this slide, I just wanted to highlight, if you look at the transition grades, so if you look at the 7th grade and the 9th grade, those are our two highest grades. I mean, it's not high percentages by any means, but that's where we see those big upward ticks. Again, that's that transition time. 7th graders are new to the middle school, freshmen are new to the high school, so are they trying to figure out or challenge what's going on at those schools? Or is it something that needs to be discussed further? This cross-tabulation is, again, just to show the impact of teachers talking about substance use with students, that if we engage in meaningful ways to educate and talk with students, that we see that drug use decreases. And what this also is reflective of, we get students that report that they feel their teachers care about them, that they feel that they belong, they're taking that time to really care about what's going on with them. And it's just showing that impact of that engagement. This is an additional question that we've asked our students the last couple years, is kind of looking at that empathy piece of our students. I know empathy is kind of hard when you're looking at that middle and high school years. It's that, focus on me type of thing. But it's just helpful information. Again, when we talk about these things, it's looking at their definition of what is helping or what is hurting. And then it generally seems we focus on always the negative, so we like to end it with some positives as well. So we look at healthy lifestyles, and we ask the students, what are things that you do that help you get through or to help you cope, or just those positives. And what we need to do is continue to focus and encourage and promote these type of activities. And these are very general. We didn't get very specific, but as you can see, the number one response with our students is talking with someone that they trust. Second is participating in healthy activities, whether it's sports, hobbies, reading, drawing, etc. They're getting at least 8 hours of sleep, and that they're getting some type of exercise daily. This next slide is asking students, are you aware of helping resources? And what's nice is we have comparable data from 2019 and 2021. 2019 was the first year that we asked this question, and it's nice to see the shift in a positive, that our kids are becoming more aware of the helping resources, not only in the school, but also out into the community. Number one was that they recognized the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and just to kind of, a reason why that one is higher, we've done a lot of promotion and awareness of that. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and so we did a lot in the middle and high school to promote that, and we surveyed the students in October. So at least they retain that information for a month, but we do a lot to keep that information available and accessible to the students. Second, we didn't have church and faith communities added in 2019. We added it in 2021, and so a high response rate with them relying on their church and faith groups, helping professionals at school, and then mental health and substance use agencies in the community. And it's just nice to see that increase in knowledge. Now that next question is, are they accessing those resources? It's great that they're aware of it. Do they feel comfortable to take that next step in utilizing those resources? And then our last slide for this evening is, why do you think teens choose not to drink alcohol or use drugs? And this is their perceptions and choices with that. And it's nice we have 3 years to look at comparable data, and they stay fairly consistent. But number one is they don't want to disappoint their parents or other adults. Number two, it's against the law. 3 is they have future goals and plans. And number 4, they don't want to lose eligibility to be involved in their activities. So I think that's a positive way of ending the information that I'm sharing tonight. We have a lot of reasons maybe why students answers the way they do. But again, it's not to blame or to point fingers. We use this data to focus on what we can improve and change, not only within the school, but also as a community. We each have a role to play, whether we're a parent, whether we're a community person, whether we're a business, whether we're faith-based, we're all involved with the youth and within our community. Overall, the majority of our students are thriving. They're making good choices. Our use rates are lower than the national, but we also need to acknowledge that we are seeing risk-taking behaviors and some of these behaviors did exist even prior to COVID, because that's generally the questions that we're getting now. Is it because of COVID? Is it because of this? And we've had, with us being able to have this trend data, it's helped us to be reflective and to look at that information. We need to make sure our students are given opportunities and the help that they need. And really, this is any student at any time. We don't have a label of a specific child or who may need resources or who may make a poor choice at some point. It's reflective of any student, and we need to be open and accepting of that. We all make mistakes, we all make poor choices, but we need to meet the students where they're at and what are those influences and how do we reach to help them. And I feel that within our school and with our community, we have that collaboration, we have that resource building, we have a lot of things, and very fortunate to be able to do what we do in our community. So thank you. Any questions?
So, 1 or 2 areas of worry, concern?
For me,
What would you pinpoint?
What I would pinpoint areas of concern are the students' mental health, and then those healthy coping skills. I see that our students are probably more aware of what those are in regards to comparable to adults, but are they given that ability or that opportunity to receive those services? Also, substance use is still a concern. We're seeing a shift where we're becoming more accepting of behaviors, with medical marijuana, recreational marijuana being allowed or legalized. We have kids questioning that as well. So what we see kind of in the adult population or in society, we see that trickle down into our youth. And so that concerns us as well. So I feel that we just need to continue with what we're doing. Sometimes I feel that we address some things and then we let it go thinking, oh, we fixed it or it's okay, but it's ongoing. There's always new issues, new concerns. We have different things that arise, and so we just need to be able to equip our youth with how do you handle those stressful situations or those crisis situations, and knowing how to reach out for those resources when you need them.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about Project Success?
Sure. What Project Success is, it's school-based programming, and it stands for Schools Using Coordinated Community Efforts to Strengthen Students. And we started implementing that in 2010. And really, it's a holistic programming, but it's also collaborative with the other programs within the school and community as well. So they do school-wide awareness activities. They have peer helpers and peeps, and they coordinate different campaigns. So like December was Impaired Driving Month, so they did some things in regards to seatbelt use and not drinking and driving and things like that. And then they go into classrooms. So middle school goes into 7th and 8th grade health and teaches curriculum. High school, we work with freshman health, and then opportunities if teachers want them to come in and do presentations and education as well. We also receive student referrals, so if a student has a school violation or a behavioral concern, they'll do a basic screen with the students, meet with the students, do some education. If they feel that that student needs a higher level of care, they'll make that referral, either school counselor, other school services, or out into the community working with the families. And so it's just nice to kind of have that whole spectrum. And then they're involved in the community, attending different meetings and things like that. And then we coordinate, it's not just our programming, but it's everything that's being implemented within the district, with second step programming, with DARE, with the social emotional learning, all those programs and implementation is key. You need to have something at all the different levels and keeping it ongoing. And so Project Success is just one of those pieces that help. And it's nice to have them right at the school grounds so students can just pop in whenever they need to talk to someone.
Referring to the logistics of the test, is it still paper version? Is it
Nope.
electronic now?
It's electronic now. 2019 was our first year doing it electronically, and I don't think our kids would know how to do paper pencil anymore. So it was more of an adjustment for me than for the students. But nope, they all did it online. Middle school went throughout the day. They were in a specific class, and then they did the survey that way. High school hit during their aero time and took a little extra time during their aero time to implement it. So it takes a classroom time for them to do it.
I was going to say, it's quite a lengthy survey.
It is, yeah. And that's why we do it every other year. We just want to be conscious of that because we know it's an intensive survey. And for us to get the data back and to do some programming and to talk about the data, we need that time to be reflective and see if what we're doing is making that impact.
It sounds as if you're able to change some of the questions and add questions. and
Yep, so they have
edit.
their basis, yep, and then we can add. So there's questions that maybe if the school district needs for things that they're working on, it's an opportunity for them to add those additional questions. So Daryl and I work on that. So there's all sorts of different data that helps in that capacity, helps with, if we're looking for grants or funding in that capacity too. So it's just a nice working resource for us to access.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions or comments for Kelly? Thanks for coming.
You bet.
All right, we'll move on to the action items, and 6.1, we need to approve the bills. Could we have a motion, please?
I move approval of the bills.
Motion by Mr. Stein
Second.
and a second by Mrs. Lohr. Any comments or questions on any of the bills? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving to 6.2 and the personnel issues. First of all, 6.2.1 retirement.
Yes, I'm bringing forth one retirement for you.
All right, can we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve retirement.
Motion by Mrs. Lohr
Second.
and a second by Mr. Stein. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6.2.2, the resignations.
Yes, I'm bringing forth 6 classified resignations for you to consider.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve resignations.
Motion by Mrs. Lohr
Second.
And a second by Mr. Stein. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6.2.3, the contract recommendations and addendums.
Yep, we have 8 classified recommendations to hire and then 2 addendums for you to consider as well.
Okay, a motion, please.
I move approval of the contract recommendations and addendums as presented.
Motion by Mr. Stein
Second?
and a second by Mrs. Lohr. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And 6.2.4, the stipend requests.
Yes, we also, in our master contract, support teachers in their advancement, and we have 6 people requesting stipends for their spring semester, and they're all working on a master's program.
Okay, could we have a motion?
Move approval of the stipend requests.
Motion by Mr. Stein,
Second?
second by Mrs. Lohr. Comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll do 6.3 in the property issues. First of all, 6.3.1, consider an architect contract.
Yes, thank you. Earlier this fall, Co-op Architects did a more comprehensive facility study for our district. Out of that particular project was a little deeper dive into some of the athletic complex needs that we might have. And this contract is for them to further study our current facilities and what needs we may have with regards to some of the repairs and condition of our current facilities and come up with a plan for what we can do about that. So that would be the contract for Co-op to further study that out of what they did already for us.
Okay, could we have a motion?
I move approval of the contract for the architect co-op architecture as presented.
Motion by Ms. Moulton,
Second.
second by Mr. Iverson. Are there any comments or questions on this contract with the architect? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And 6.3.2, select a construction manager at risk.
Yes, as a part of that project, Co-op, who has been our architect, would be overseeing our, the redo of our track, and we would be considering Mammoth Sports Construction to be the construction manager at risk for the track project. That is a professional service, so if approved, Mammoth would begin working on the documents. It would be brought forward to seek bids at some point, and then it would be a bid package that would be brought back to the board for approval. That may would include a redo of the current track, but they are also working in conjunction with the co-op project that they're, if at such time there are other improvements that could be made out of this, that may be in addition to as we go forward. So there would still be 2 stopping points here for the board to consider anything with regards to the track. There would be the seeking of bids and then an approval of the bid package as presented. So our recommendation is to hire Mammoth Sports to go ahead and work on the redo of the track in conjunction with Co-op.
So I'll make that motion
Okay, motion by Mr. Iverson.
for 6.3.2.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Iverson to approve Mammoth Sports Construction for the track project.
Second.
And a second by Ms. Moulton. Do we have any comments or questions on this? And just to reiterate again, we're not approving the project itself.
Correct. We are approving Mammoth Sports to be the construction manager at risk for the project.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6.4, we need to authorize the driver's education fees for 2022.
Thank you. We are proposing that the fee charged for student participation in the driver's ed program increase $10 from $320 to $330, with consideration that the fee has not increased since 2018, as well as keeping up with increased supply costs and labor costs. This increase is necessary to accommodate the program. The Aero Education Foundation has again agreed to fund 75% of the tuition costs for students who qualify for free and reduced meals, so we'd like to say thank you to them.
Okay, could we have a motion, please?
I move authorization for increase in driver education fees as presented.
Motion by Ms. Moulton
Second that.
and a second by Mr. Iverson. Any questions, comments on the driver education fees for this year?
Just a brief comment. Several years ago, I was at a conference because I was involved with the driver education program for many years, and I had people from other schools come up to me and say, "How did you convince your education foundation to support this program?" Other schools are struggling with how to get outside support, and our community is very, very fortunate to have an organization like this that steps forward to fund at this point at 75% of the cost for those on free and reduced. So this is a tremendous asset that we have in our community. And I just want everybody to be aware that this is not something that happens in other communities. We're very fortunate here.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on that one? So we have the motion and the second to approve the fees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 6.5, the second reading of policy GBEC.
Yes, thank you. Last month, we brought forward GBEC, the use of alcohol and other drugs by employees. This policy comes in conjunction with recommendations by the Associated School Boards, our parent organization, for our board, but with the addition of the medical marijuana. And now we have a student and a student policy currently adopted, and now a staff policy to reflect some of those changes. We had no public comments, and there are no changes from the first reading, so we are recommending this for your approval.
Okay, motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the use of alcohol and other drugs by employees.
Motion by Mrs. Lohr. And a second by Ms. Moulton to approve our GBEC, our policy on alcohol and drugs. Any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we get to our student enrollment requests.
6.6.1, I do not have an open enrollment request for you this evening. And then 6.6.2, there is 1/13/2810 that we recommend for approval.
Okay, could we have a motion to approve the 132810?
Move approval of the 132810.
Motion by Mr. Stein
Second.
and a second by Mrs. Lohr. Any comments or questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll get now to the communications and the administrative report.
All right, I want to offer my own thanks to Kelly. Kelly is a tireless worker. Kelly Rumsa, on behalf of and an advocate for just the prevention efforts and seeing what the project success does and the additions of the staff in our school. I appreciate that, and I thank her for coming. Then a couple of things. One, the legislative session starts tomorrow with the State of the State at 1 o'clock. I will keep the board informed of any upcoming legislation. We are appreciative. The governor in her budget address set the state funding increase at 6%. Obviously, we are hopeful that our legislators will agree with that when they consider everything that's going on in Pierre this year. We had good communications with our own 3 Watertown legislators, so we're well represented there in Pierre as far as that goes. a plug for the Aero Education Pizza Bash. That will be on Friday, January 21st, in conjunction with a speech fiesta and the Boys and Girls doubleheader with Rapid City Stevens. That's from 4 to 7 p.m. in our Commons. And then also just a note for the public, but we did change our COVID isolation guidelines from the CDC recommended 10 days to the updated CDC 5 days out, 5 days back with a return with masking. So that change was made last week to our COVID procedures. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 7.2, is there any board reports to the superintendent this evening?
I would like to share an announcement that we have in regards to our food service program. The district is excited to announce that through the Nutrition Services Federal Food Service Program, the state has authorized the allowance of providing each student with a free coupon to invite parents or guardians to eat lunch with their student. The program has always allowed and welcomed parents to come and eat with their child, but this provides the meal to the adult free of cost. Buildings will be sending out communications to their families on the process of getting on the list to attend school, to attend lunch at their school on specific days. So look for information on that. We intend to begin that at the end of January. In order to accommodate an increase to meal counts, it will be required to reserve in advance, and it is possible that available slots could be used up on any given day. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heidi. If there's not anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Moulton. Second by Mr. Iverson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And thanks for coming, everybody.